So the only metric of success is money, financially. And so because I'm 43 years of age, overweight, and I don't have any money, I'm a failure. As far as, being told how to get to the bag, so to speak, or how to get some money, I was told get a college degree. I did that. Still didn't get the bag. I got jobs. I think I was barking up the wrong tree. Um, I studied finance and I tried to work in finance because that's where the money was. But that's not where I was going to be. That's not where I was hired. That's not where I was retained. And that's not where I found guidance. Okay. So, I mean, the point here is I'm responsible for my own life. And um, I'm a success. Okay. All right. I'm a success. Let me count the ways. All right. 43 years old. I'm a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, a college graduate. That means I have a bachelor's degree. I have um, a master's degree as well. And let's see, I've traveled to 42 countries. I have worked in four countries: South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Peru. I taught English in various capacities. I started as a after school tutor and I matriculated and advanced to a college professor um, over the course of 12 years. Actually, I got to that college. I was a college instructor 3 years into teaching English. I did that all internationally. So the reason I'm making this video, based upon everything that I've told you about myself, um, is because I'm frustrated because here in Los Angeles, number one, my international experience isn't transferable. It isn't even recognized. But specifically, it's not recognized by my family. I have to remind them, hey, I was a college professor in South Korea. Um, I had my own apartment, salaried position. I worked a 9-hour work week in South Korea. Me, a black man, I did that. Okay. Um, I also worked in Saudi Arabia as a civilian military contractor. I taught for the Saudi, the Royal Saudi Air Force. Like these are my accomplishments. I said 42 countries, specifically 40 countries. Let me take off Kuwait and Canada because I only had layovers in those countries. I didn't get outside of the airports and travel around. Only did I um, yeah, I had layovers like 3 hours in Canada, and then maybe an hour in Kuwait. I never got off the plane in Kuwait. Anyhow, this is who I am. These are my accomplishments. This is what I have to look at. And my travels, my travels have not been for the sake of going into a hotel and luxuriating in and taking in massages and going to the pool and doing all of this. That's not my idea of travel per se. I've gotten my hands dirty. I've gotten out and seen the world. I In 2015, I slept in the jungles with the Batak or Batek people of the Philippines, hiked up into the mountains with a guide to be with the people who live off the grid, high into the mountains, where they subsist on, fishing, using an ancient method of, paralysis, poison induced paralysis. They put a particular plant in the water that paralyzes the fish, stuns them, and then they just pick them out of the water. and then they cook them up, over a fire. I was with these people. I wasn't staying in a hotel. I wanted to see the real deal. I traveled to Ethiopia, and I was inspired by Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr., who is Yale professor, maybe a Harvard or Yale educated professor, and he had traveled to ancient historic African cities in Ethiopia. I watched his documentary. I was inspired, intrigued, and I decided that I would go. So, along with a couple other of my colleagues at the time, we boarded planes from Saudi Arabia, where we worked at that time, and we flew to Ethiopia for our vacation. The men I was the men who this trip I joined these men on their trip. They were going to Ethiopia. These were white men who had experience with Ethiopia, and I felt kind of ashamed that these white men had more experience in Africa than I had, and they were touting, "Oh, we love the Ethiopian wine and the Ethiopian food," and they could tell me more about this African nation than I could. I had only learned of it through watching documentaries. But I wasn't about luxuriating in hotels and doing all of this stuff. I wanted to get my hands dirty and see things. And I'm not an archaeologist, a historian, a sociologist. I'm none of these things. I'm just a very curious person. And I say, damn National Geographic. I don't need them to tell me about the world. I need to see the world for myself. So when I had the money, I was making buku dollars. Buku is a French word that means a lot. So I had buku dollars. I had a lot, buku money. I had a lot of money when I worked in Saudi Arabia. So I flew to Ethiopia with my colleagues. But like once I got to Ethiopia with my colleagues, they went off on their own because they had been there before. They had more experience. I went with a tour, and I went to the ancient cities of Aksum, Lalibela, Gondar, Bahirdar, and of course Addis Ababa. I got an education through that travel, one that I never where one that the subjects of which everything that I learned, all the subjects that I learned, the topics and everything that I learned, I had never learned that stuff in Los Angeles, in schools, never. And to this day, as it is proof of the video that I made at the Getty Museum, my trip to the Getty Museum about 3 weeks ago, I couldn't even find mention of Ethiopia at that museum. But what I do know is that there are scholars, there are elitists in our society who know the importance of Ethiopia to the black man. I am a black man. I identify as a black man. I just saw a post on Instagram that touted the removal. There is the slave Bible, and the slave Bible consists of 200 some odd chapters of the King James Bible that actually has over 1,000 chapters or 1,000, something to this effect. I just watched this. I just watched this minutes ago. Let me see if I can find it so I can speak intelligibly. Where was this? I can't find it right now. I was just looking at it. Okay, maybe it was Mr. Imhotep. No. Shaka Bars, maybe. I follow Mr. Imhotep on Instagram. I follow Shaka Bars on Instagram. I saw this information posted about. I saw the information posted about. What was it about? It was about the Bible. It was about the slave Bible and how there are The slave Bible does not tell the story. Okay, let me give you an example. Exodus. The book of Exodus is about, let my people go, the freeing of the slaves. That whole story, which inspires one to rebel and seek emancipation, manumission from slavery. That whole story is removed from the slave Bible. Why? Because the purpose is to keep people enslaved, in bondage. So I say that to say, in very much the same way, our educational system does not teach us about our emancipation or manumission or freedom. Because if I had learned about Ethiopia early on, I'd have very different ideas about the world. Because I always thought, man, we've never won against these colonizers. That was a prevailing, a running theme throughout my life. It was just shut up and listen to what others have to say because you have no ground to stand on. Well, when you look at Ethiopia, you absolutely have ground to stand on. And Ethiopia is such a unifying force that you've got to go and you've got to look at Ethiopia and say, man, if they could do it, we can do it. That's what the Jamaican Rastafarian movement is about. They saw a black man in power. They saw a black nation stand up for itself and defeat a colonizing force, a colonizing army, when all other nations had fallen to them. They saw hope. And so when I got the chance to go to Ethiopia and then I got an education. I got an education, one that I would not have received otherwise. No one would have told me this information. And so it's important. That was important. So my travels were important, but like I'm going back to it. I wasn't luxuriating. I was getting out there, being with the people, learning history. Right? I could have gone to Ethiopia and gone on like wine tours and stayed in they do have some beautiful 5-star hotels, luxuriated and done all of this stuff. But that wasn't my purpose. My purpose was to learn, was to educate myself because I knew the value of travel. So damn the fact, okay, I might travel to this country, I might get this education, but it may not lead to a job. Damn that. I'm not looking to be employed by one of these colonizers. I'm not looking to make someone else rich. I'm looking to enrich my life, to become smarter and stronger and wiser. Because the whole idea, the whole notion that if you have a bachelor's degree that somehow you will be, successful, that's out the window. Because that didn't happen for me. I didn't see a clear path to, a living wage job after graduating from college. Again, I might have been barking up the wrong tree because I'm 43 years old today. And when I was 22, years old, I took an exam in California to meet one of the requirements to become a teacher. 21 years ago, I took that exam, and had I desired, had I had the desire to become a teacher at that time, then I would have met one of the requirements to become a teacher. I didn't have that as my goal. I didn't set that as my goal. I never thought that being a teacher would be fulfilling. I've learned that being a teacher is something that I have to fall back on. It's where I ended up spending 12 years of my life internationally as a teacher. It's where I am today as a substitute teacher. But it wasn't my goal. So what I'm saying is 21 years ago, I was in line to take a different route, but I had no mentorship and no idea what I was going to do or what I wanted to do. And being a teacher wasn't part of the idea. I didn't see it as lucrative or the way. Maybe I was wrong, but this is my life as it is today. This is where I am. So I didn't luxuriate when I traveled. The Philippines, Ethiopia, Tanzania. I stayed in a decent hotel right there on the beach, but um, yeah, I sought out the historic sites. I sought out learning about the history, which was important, valuable, and I was certainly interested in it. I learned about the Arab slave trade. In America, we always hear about the transatlantic slave trade, but I went to East Africa, Tanzania, and I went to Zanzibar, Stone Town. I was inspired by Anthony Bourdain, his example, because I didn't want a white person to tell me what life was like. I didn't want to see the world through Anthony Bourdain's eyes. I saw that he could travel the world, so I sought to travel the world so that I could make my own, I could tell my own story, make my own judgments. I traveled to South America in 2015 for the first time. That was a revelation because I had up until that time between 2007 and 2015, I had lived and worked in South Korea, and Asian societies, Korea especially, is different from South American society. You know, PDA, public displays of affection in South America, in Latin American countries is very, acceptable. There's a lot of passion, love, PDA, you see people petting, kissing, hugging, and all of this in those countries. Whereas in Korea, that was very minimal. Didn't see all of that kind of stuff. So when I got to South America, I was it was kind of a culture shock. It was a it was an excellent culture shock because all of the Latinas brought me in. Oh, you're my teacher. Come here. I'll give you a hug and dos besos, two kisses on your cheek, warm, friendly. Wow, that was something new and different for me. In Korea, everything was very standoffish. You just bowed to someone, no shaking hands, no hugs, none of this. Again, I returned to Peru in 2017, and my goal was not to luxuriate and do some stuff, but it was rather to stay in hostels, stay in cheap accommodations, but go to these historic sites. So I went to Machu Picchu, and then when I went to Japan, I went to you know Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I went to Miyajima to get a sense of the culture, to get a sense of the history. And then I went to, where else did I go? I went to Cuba. I went to Cuba to get a real sense of American history. I think I got a better sense of American history in Cuba than I did in any other travels in America. I saw the silver coinage that these uh, these Europeans coveted and that they carried with them. There was a ship that sank, and in the ship there were coins, and they excavated it. They brought it above ground, and they found these coins. It was part of the booty on the ship, and I remember being in the museum in Cuba. I took a picture of these coins, but I didn't realize that they said no photos. So I was able to get a photo of them, one photo. But it brought home the fact, man, look at this. These people were after wealth. And you could literally see what it was exactly that they were after. I don't remember seeing anything like that anywhere up until that point. And then there was just a different, there was a very different perspective on American history that I saw in Cuba. I saw some good things in Cuba too, but it was through my own eyes and my own experience. It wasn't from listening from to other people. So I could discern, fact from fiction once I heard, what people said or how they painted Cuba. My discernment was better, stronger. I knew if they were, speaking the truth or if they were just, spinning it. Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, or Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, you know. Yeah. Anyway, I've traveled. I'm a very rich man. I'm very wealthy due to my travels. My pockets, nah, they're kind of thin. Let's change that in 2023.
You're at 109 right now.
Peace and blessings.